Sarah had always thought her marriage to Ethan was perfect. They had been together for nearly a decade, and while life had its ups and downs, she believed they had weathered every storm as a team. Ethan was dependable, kind, and deeply committed, or so she thought. Over time, however, Sarah found herself drawn to someone else, her co-worker, Alex. It started innocently enough, with casual conversations during coffee breaks and occasional shared lunches. Alex was charming and attentive, offering her the excitement and attention she hadn't realized she craved. What began as harmless banter turned into lingering glances and secret texts. One night, after weeks of battling guilt, Sarah crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Ethan had been working late, and Alex invited her over. They laughed, drank wine, and eventually succumbed to the tension that had been building between them. As Sarah drove home that night, guilt gnawed at her, but she convinced herself it was a one-time mistake. Ethan, however, was not oblivious. He had noticed a change in Sarah, her distracted demeanor, the sudden care she took with her appearance, and the way she guarded her phone. Though he never confronted her, his silence was louder than words. One day, Sarah came home to an eerily quiet house. The bed was neatly made, the dishes put away, and Ethan's favorite chair sat empty. On the kitchen counter lay his wedding ring, glinting under the soft light. Next to it was a note written in Ethan's careful handwriting. "I hope you find what you're looking for. Take care of yourself." Panic surged through her as she searched the house, calling his name. His clothes, his toiletries, and even the framed photos of their wedding were gone. It was as if he had vanished overnight. Sarah tried calling him, but his number was disconnected. She reached out to friends and family, but no one had seen or heard from him. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of Ethan's absence sank in. Alone in the quiet house, Sarah was left to grapple with her choices. She replayed every moment of their marriage, every decision that had led to this point. The weight of what she had lost and the pain she had caused settled heavily on her. Ethan's disappearance wasn't just a physical absence. It was a reminder of the trust she had shattered and the love she had taken for granted. Sarah realized too late that sometimes the consequences of betrayal aren't loud or dramatic. They're silent, final, and irreversible. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah fell into a routine that felt hollow without Ethan. Every corner of the house reminded her of him, of the life they had built together. She couldn't escape the questions that haunted her. Where had he gone? Was he okay? Would he ever forgive her? At first, she tried to distract herself with work, diving headfirst into projects and volunteering for overtime. Alex, sensing her withdrawal, reached out to her, but she brushed him off. The thrill of their affair had long since faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of regret. Whatever fleeting excitement she had felt was not worth the price she had paid. One evening, Sarah decided to clean out their bedroom closet. It was an attempt to do something productive, to distract herself from the void. As she sifted through old boxes, she found a small leather-bound journal tucked behind a row of Ethan's neatly folded shirts. Her heart raced as she opened it, recognizing his handwriting immediately. The journal wasn't a diary in the traditional sense. It was a collection of thoughts, observations, and memories. Flipping through the pages, Sarah found entries dating back to the early days of their marriage. Ethan had written about their first anniversary, the road trips they had taken, and even the mundane joys of cooking dinner together. But as she reached the more recent entries, the tone shifted. "I don't know who she is anymore," one entry read. "I see her smiling at her phone, laughing at jokes I'll never hear. I feel like a stranger in my own home." Another entry was even more heartbreaking. "I love her, but I can't keep pretending I don't know. She deserves to be happy, even if it's not with me. Maybe leaving is the only way to set us both free." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she read his words. He had known all along, and yet he had stayed, hoping things might change. His decision to leave wasn't out of anger, but out of heartbreak. He had loved her enough to let her go. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She clutched the journal to her chest, replaying every moment of their time together. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. Ethan had been her rock, her anchor, and she had let her own insecurities and restlessness drive her to betray him. In the months that followed, Sarah began to rebuild her life. She sought therapy to understand the choices she had made and the pain she had caused. She reached out to Ethan's family, hoping for any clue about his whereabouts, but they were as tight-lipped as he had been. It was clear Ethan didn't want to be found, at least not yet. One rainy afternoon, as Sarah sat by the window with a cup of tea, she received a letter in the mail. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. It was Ethan's. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single page. The note was brief but heartfelt. "I hope you're doing well. I needed time to heal, and I hope you found your own peace too. Maybe one day we can talk. Until then, take care of yourself, Sarah. Ethan." The letter brought a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a glimmer of hope. While she didn't know if they would ever truly reconcile, she was grateful for the chance to make amends, even if only in her heart. For now, all she could do was honor his wish for peace and continue on her journey of self-discovery. After reading Ethan's letter, Sarah folded it carefully and placed it in the journal she had found months ago. It became a ritual. Whenever she felt overwhelmed by guilt or longing, she would read his words, hoping to understand his perspective more deeply and find the strength to move forward. In the following months, Sarah's life shifted in subtle but profound ways. She left her job, unable to face the memories of her affair with Alex. Instead, she pursued a career in counseling, inspired by her therapy sessions. She wanted to help others navigate the complicated emotions and choices that could lead to broken relationships. Though she tried to focus on her personal growth, the thought of Ethan was always there, lingering like a quiet shadow. She found herself wondering if he had found happiness, if he had moved on, or if he still thought about her as much as she thought about him. One day, nearly a year after Ethan had disappeared, Sarah was volunteering at a community event. She had spent the afternoon helping set up a food drive, chatting with other volunteers, and immersing herself in the work. As she packed up the last box of donations, she felt a presence behind her. Turning around, she froze. Ethan stood there, looking just as she remembered, but with an air of calm she hadn't seen before. He smiled faintly, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of warmth and caution. "Hi, Sarah," he said softly. She felt her breath catch, unsure of what to say. "Ethan, I didn't think I'd ever see you again. I didn't think I'd come back," he admitted. "But I heard about this event and thought I might run into you." The two stood there for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, Ethan gestured to a bench nearby. "Do you want to sit and talk?" Sarah nodded, and they walked together in silence. Sitting side by side, the floodgates opened. Sarah apologized, her voice trembling as she confessed everything. Her feelings of inadequacy, the choices she had made, and the pain she had caused him. Ethan listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he took a deep breath. "Thank you for being honest," he said. "I've had a lot of time to think, and I realized something. As much as your betrayal hurt, our problems didn't start with Alex. They started long before that, when we stopped communicating, when we started taking each other for granted." Sarah nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know. I see that now, and I'm so sorry." Ethan placed a hand on hers, a gesture of both comfort and closure. "I don't know what the future holds for us, Sarah, but I do know that I've forgiven you, for my own sake as much as yours." Her heart ached at his words, but she felt a sense of relief she hadn't known she needed. "Thank you," she whispered. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, sharing stories of the past year and reflecting on what they had learned. When it was time to part ways, Ethan stood and looked at her one last time. "Take care of yourself, Sarah," he said. "Maybe we'll cross paths again someday." As she watched him walk away, Sarah felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. Their chapter as husband and wife had ended, but their story wasn't over. For now, She was content to take things one day at a time, carrying with her the lessons of love, loss, and forgiveness. As Ethan walked away, Sarah stayed on the bench for a while, letting the weight of their conversation settle. It wasn't the reconciliation she had once hoped for, but it was something just as valuable: closure and the possibility of a new beginning, however undefined. In the following weeks, Sarah found herself replaying their conversation in her mind. She appreciated the courage it must have taken for Ethan to face her after everything that had happened. His forgiveness, though bittersweet, felt like a gift she didn't think she deserved. One evening, as Sarah was tidying up her small apartment, she came across the journal again. This time, she decided to add her own words. She wrote about her regrets, her growth, and her gratitude for the time they had shared. It became a habit. Writing down her thoughts and emotions helped her process the lingering pain and appreciate the lessons she had learned. Her career in counseling flourished, and she began to specialize in relationship therapy. She poured her heart into her work, helping couples navigate the complexities of love and trust. Each session reminded her of the importance of honesty and communication, lessons she wished she had embraced earlier in her marriage. One day, about 2 years after their meeting at the community event, Sarah received an unexpected message through social media. It was from Ethan. "Hi, Sarah. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I'm in town for a while and thought maybe we could catch up." Her heart raced as she read the message. It wasn't filled with promises or hidden meanings. It was simply an invitation to reconnect. After a moment of hesitation, she replied, "I'd like that. Let me know when you're free." They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. When Sarah walked in, she spotted Ethan sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in hand. He looked different, older, perhaps, but more at peace. As they talked, the years seemed to melt away. They shared updates about their lives, their careers, and the paths they had taken since parting ways. There was no tension, no lingering bitterness, just two people who had once shared a deep connection. Toward the end of their conversation, Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I've thought a lot about us, Sarah," he said. "I don't know where this will lead, but I'd like to spend more time together, if you're open to it." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here, she realized how much they had both changed. "I'd like that too," she replied cautiously. "But let's take it slow. We're not the same people we used to be." Ethan nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Slow sounds good." From that day forward, they began to rebuild something new. Not the marriage they had lost, but a friendship that could grow into something more. They took their time, allowing trust and understanding to develop naturally. Though the future was uncertain, Sarah felt hopeful for the first time in years. She and Ethan had been broken, but they were also stronger for it. Together, they were learning that sometimes love doesn't have to follow the same path. It can find a new way forward one step at a time.